so much of recovery has to happen in relationship. And like John was mentioning, I mean, I had a job where I could listen to, truthfully, 8 hours of content every single day. You know, I put in my earbuds and I was listening to, you know, probably 4 or 5 episodes of the Pure Desire podcast every day, listening to a couple episodes of some other podcasts, you know, the Sheila Gregoire podcast, Adam Young, The Place We Find Ourselves. I mean, just all, and the list continues to go on, and just consuming all of this content. And then 3 days a week, John and I would spend 2-3 hours in the gym, mostly not because we were working out so much, but because we would talk so much in between sets.
And so we're
having these really deep
gym.
and meaningful conversations just in the gym. But because John is fearless and will have any conversation about any topic anywhere, it felt very free. And you wouldn't believe how many guys would come up to us and say, hey, what are you guys talking about? Like, this is really cool. Like, hey, maybe I need to be in one of these groups. And just the fact that him and I were working on these things together started to spill over into LA Fitness here in Portland. I mean, I couldn't believe it. But I will say, I want to just address something here. One of the big things that's been important for me in my recovery journey is working on these relationships with my family. And with my sister, with my mom, with my dad, each of them individually, all of them collectively. And to John's point, I think you mentioned it's been a process. You know, it wasn't pretty for 2.5 years when I finally realized I'm really angry at my mom. But, you know, I want to be in a relationship with this woman. I mean, this is the kind of woman who, even in the middle of that 2.5 years, said, hey, we have a car. Like I'd gotten in a small accident. My car was deemed to be totaled. And they're like, well, we have an extra car. What if I drove this out to you and gave you my car for free? I mean, that's the kind of heart that my mom has. Like, she's going to drive from Minnesota all the way out here, 1,800 miles, give me her car and just
fly home.
Yeah, fly home. Like, that's it. I mean, just so much love. And I could not figure out why I was angry at her. And so I couldn't figure out how to forgive her, so that I could stop drinking the poison of anger, hoping that she dies when I'm the one that's getting sick every time I keep drinking this bitterness. And so it took me 2.5 years to untangle all of these threads. And I remember where I was on a rooftop in Portland, cleaning moss off the roof, listening to this podcast from Adam Young. And he finally articulated specifically the pain that I had experienced in growing up in a house with my mother. And it was this really subtle thing. And I'd listened to like 60 of his episodes before that to understand all the words he was even using. And I yelled out an expletive from a rooftop with my whole body, but it was the first time that I was angry at the right thing.
Wow.
For 2.5 years, I was just generally angry. I was like, I feel unsafe to my mom. I'm much more physically intimidating than my mom is. Like, she's a lovable woman.
You knew
like,
there was something emotionally there.
It's not this. And so it was that was the first time that something clicked for me and I was able to articulate my anger. And I think that's something that happens so often in a group context. You're hearing someone else's story. I was hearing Adam Young's story.
Yeah.
He was articulating it, and all of a sudden it just clicked for me, and everything in my story fell into place. And that was really a pivotal moment for me in my recovery journey.
Am I allowed to ask what he said on that podcast that clicked for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If we have an hour, we can really get into it.
Right.
It's one of those things. It's hard to articulate it, I think. But essentially, instead of my parents freely giving emotional energy and attuning to my emotions and shepherding me, I thought that I had to attune to my mom's emotions. Now, whether or not that was true is honestly irrelevant, because it doesn't really matter. What matters is that I thought it was true as a child. And that kind of gets, I'm not blaming my parents for these things.
And that's a reminder, like, we're actually not trying to see what they did. We're trying to figure out what we reacted to and what we believed because of it. And that's what I hear you doing.
Absolutely. And so I realized that as a 8-year-old, 10-year-old, I was trying to regulate my mom's emotions when she was mad at my sister, because my sister was taking 4 hours to get ready to go out the door because there was some emotional thing that was happening that my mom wasn't able to see. And so I'm sitting there in the car ready to go, and I'm trying to regulate my mom's emotions. I'm trying to go in as a go-between between my sister. And so now instead of just freely receiving love from a parent, me as a child, I'm trying to love my mom. I'm trying to, articulate these things to her. And that's really damaging to a child to try to be a parent when you're 8 years old, 10 years old. And so then when I discover pornography, all of a sudden I find a place that soothes my emotions, that gives me everything without asking anything in return. Now, it came at a terrible cost immediately afterwards. That shame and the aloneness was just through the roof. And that mountain of shame is something that I've spent 3 years digging out from underneath. And people have been digging me out from underneath it and all these things. But that was really the piece that, I was, I guess, emotionally abused, or I was experiencing emotional abuse from my mom, even though she was just being a pretty normal mom. Sure. I was interpreting it in this way that was really damaging for me.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
So it makes me think of the well-known quote in recovery that says something like, every man knocking at the door of a brothel is really looking for God. Mm-hmm. That what he's really looking for is comfort. What he's really looking for is belonging.
Yes.
What he's really looking for is safety. What he's really looking for is to be seen. And in a very artificial, momentary way, we find it in compulsive sexual behavior. Absolutely. But it's those deeper longings that we were all created for. And it's where I think recovery so beautifully intertwines with spirituality, that we were all made for God. And we all know the truth of that. Mm-hmm. But these are the places where we start to experience it. Like, I was made at some of my deepest levels to be seen, known, loved, comforted. And because I live in a sinful, fallen world, which I love how you said that, like you were finally angry at the right thing, like not really at your mom, but what you lacked in a world that should not have happened. In a perfect world, which is what eternity will be, we won't lack for any of those things. But when we do lack for that, then we go off onto other things to try to find what we're looking for. Because again, when you're 12, 10, 14, all the times people's stories start, you don't have a way to articulate that's what you're looking for, but you know how it feels. Yeah. You know what it does for you. And suddenly you've got a hook set in you that you think is about, whether it's the fetish or bestiality, like we mentioned, those ugly things. We're like, why is that the hook? Mm-hmm. When really underneath it, what we were looking for was very appropriate God-given needs of comfort, peace, belonging. Yeah. And you're seeing that now in a way that allows you to release your mom from that, because it wasn't about her to begin with. It was about really your relationship with Abba Father, with God who meets those needs. Mm-hmm. And until we can articulate that and bring it to him, our faith up to that point can be just very like, yes, Lord, I love you. You love me. We know the truth of it. But in those moments, I'm guessing you were probably beginning to experience it in much deeper ways of like, oh, you're the one, Lord, that meets this need. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty cool.
And just to name this for our audience and for you, Brian, I love the Dan Allender quote that simply says, the enemy must love abuse of any form, sexual, physical, or emotional. And there's a lot of all of those in your story, because what can take seconds to occur, like that moment in the car, or that moment earlier on with the dog in your childhood home, what takes seconds to occur can take a lifetime to unpack. And I think for those in our audience who are struggling with this compulsive behavior, whether that's fantasy or masturbation or lust or buying sex or infidelity, whatever it might be, there can sometimes just be this like, why am I doing, like, I don't understand, right? And there's such deep work that needs to, more than likely, go into understanding to find, what am I actually angry about? Right. To place that appropriately in order to find healing.